But this is a concept that was thrown around in my head today because people who are listening to this, we're approaching the hour mark and they might have finished their cardio now and they're like, right, come on, guys. We can only do so much of a Scotsman and an Irishman chatting about this on here. So I was thinking about bikini training, right? And of course I was. You're thinking, right? Of course you were thinking about those bikini girls, Andrew, right?
Yeah.
Because that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
sort of guy you are, right? And I was thinking about periodization, right? Not periodized nutrition, but periodization in terms of training, right? And one of the things that we see in the bikini class, and I think it's, having judged a lot of shows, probably one of the toughest classes on the athletes. And I think it's because there's always that degree of ambiguity about it, yeah, about what it is the judges are often sometimes looking for. And you always often get judged relative to the people in your other class. And what that means is sometimes you get a harder look, sometimes there's a slightly softer look, sometimes you get a slightly bigger look, sometimes you get a slightly smaller look. Are you still with me?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, on this one.
Hmm.
But then I noticed that a lot of them train with a particular style. They train legs 3 times a week, don't do any sort of chest workouts, don't really do much in the way of arms. Sometimes they do a little bit of shoulders and they do a little bit of back. Yeah. And that would that sort of fit with your sort of experience of speaking to these particular types of athletes?
Yeah, I've seen that a
Yeah,
lot.
yeah, you see it a lot, right? You can pick that
Yeah.
template up. Now, what we do know, and you know this, right, is I've been trying to become too muscular for my whole fucking life, right? It's very hard to build muscle, like
Yeah.
really, really hard. And these athletes, I think, they're overly concerned with not training their chest or their arms or the back and stuff for fear that they're going to get out of proportion or something like that, right?
Yeah.
But this is the concept that I've been playing around with, which is like, why? Why? Right? Because you're not training your whole body, right? So you're not getting developed as symmetrical as you can get developed, right? And because all these competitions, very often you want to have different looks, right? For going into these different contests. Maybe you want to be bigger sometimes. Maybe you want to be slightly smaller sometimes. And this one. For me, it seems like the most obvious thing to do is to periodize your training, e.g., train your full body all fucking year and get as big as you possibly can. And then when it comes to the contests, that you're going to do, change the type of training to maybe, I don't know, take out some of the arm training, take out some of that chest training, so that you maybe get a little bit detrained for your event that you're interested in doing, because it's very easy once you've finished your training, once you finish your contest cycle that you're doing or the events that you're doing, to just go back in the gym and to pump your muscles back up again and you regain that muscle which was maybe atrophied a little bit, rather than trying to just build completely new muscle, which
Yeah.
is a completely different strategy. And I've been throwing around this concept in my head the other day there. And I thought I'd throw that out there and see what you think about this.
Yeah. I've actually, so I would judge obviously for the PCA,
Yeah, yeah.
and I've witnessed a girl in bikini where she was completely absent of any pec development
Yeah,
whatsoever,
yeah, you see it.
and it threw the balance of her top line completely off.
Yeah. So when
So
they
she'd
stand in
act,
that side shot with the arm
yeah,
out.
she had actually asked me for the feedback, and I actually said, "You're, I assume that you avoid training chest completely." And she goes, "Yeah, my coach says not to do any," and I was like,
Mm,
"You should do some." The reality is, like, if you're for some reason in your pursuit of development that the a muscle is hyper responsive to stimulus beyond all other muscle in your body, i.e., the chest in that situation, then at that point you would probably scale down the
yeah.
amount of work you do. And if we look at the sort of Flex Lewis, not that he's a bikini guy, but
Yeah. Caps.
Flex Lewis had to stop training legs because his legs were overdeveloped and he had to
Yeah.
allow his upper body. So there's it's not very likely, particularly as a natural bodybuilder, that you're going to wake up one day and go, "Oh my god, that body part is too big."
Yeah.
This is a very slow process, and we're literally just developing what that, as Arnie would say, about sort of sculpting a physique.
Mm.
Like adding a bit of clay on. It's a slow process. And it's better to have a little bit of muscle in that area. But most bikini girls are slight. They're not heavily muscled across their whole body. And as you said, they're spending a lot of time in the lower half, legs. And I can get that with maybe the likes of wellness categories where
Yeah,
they're being rewarded for having hyper development in the lower body. But for me, you're right. Just work on the physique, bring nice balance to it across the board. And if there's areas that are looking slightly overdeveloped, then scale back on the volume.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I think. The other thing I've observed is this, and this isn't specific to bikini, but sometimes people have just got structural limitations in their physique.
Yeah,
They just do. So and overcoming those limitations is a challenge. And again, the only way I've seen people overcome those limitations of their structure down the years is by building more muscle over their whole physique, which seems to sort of bring up areas that were perhaps not looking quite as good as they were before, and then posing in a particular way alongside good conditioning, because the good conditioning seems to bring the waistline in that little bit more. So even if you're thinking like, okay, maybe I've got too much chest development as a bikini athlete, maybe not actually. Maybe not. Maybe actually that will enhance your physique in such a way to make you look even better rather than not particular training. And again, I don't know what you think of that.
yeah. No, I think you're bang on, 100%.
So, like I say, I'm sure you were not anticipating me going down this bikini route style question at the end of our little podcast on here, but just again something I've been throwing around, and I guess what I'm looking for there was like a soundboard. What do you think? So, should we now revolutionize all bikini athletes training and just say like, look, train the whole body, stop doing it the legs just 3 times a week. And then when you come 6 to 8 weeks out from the show, we stop maybe training those particular areas. And then what will happen is they will perhaps, they'll not, well, they might atrophy a little bit or lose some pump, but actually that's okay because if we need more size at the next show, we can pump them back up again. Is that a strategy?
Yeah, I think that's cool. Most of the girls that I have in terms of competing in
Hmm.
bikini, I've had girls that's come to me, and whenever I'm programming them, they're questioning, why I put sort of certain volume in for those areas, and they're worried, they're really concerned about building that muscle. And I'm like, how long have you been training? And they're, oh, I've been training 4 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever it is. And I'm like, Is there any of your body parts way too big? Like, no, it's like going chill. We need to make sure that you don't want to be creating. It's not just about muscle development. It's also about function. Making sure that you're strong
Yeah,
in all planes of movement, I think, is very beneficial just for overall mechanical function
yeah,
and general strength. But if there's enough sort of development there, even in bikini athletes, what you don't want to be seeing is like rib coming through here and the delts being nice and rounded out. There should be still a nice little balance across that
mm,
top line, even with the bikini athletes. So I think what you're saying there is exactly the right advice.
cool.